Hello all. Today we will be seeing HSQL database, which is an in-memory database which can be used as in-memory database, or it can be used as a server which can be launched externally and used in our programs written in Eclipse, in Java basically. So there can be two different runtimes, our Java runtime and the database runtime, which both of them can be managed separately. So to begin with, let's see the POM dependencies that we need. So these are the list of dependencies. Since we are using Hibernate, Hibernate is the ORM framework which maps the objects to the backend relational database. So right now in this video we are seeing the HSQL database, which is the relational database that we are going to connect to. So for Hibernate, I'm using 4.3.6 version, and HSQL database 2.5 version I'm using. So after you are done with the form dependencies and downloaded the jars, the next step will be to set up the HSQL database. So now we have this Maven repo where these jars get downloaded. Basically, these are the three jars. This is the server jar, this is the source code of the server, and these are the Java docs. So I have copied this server jar and put it into a separate folder over here and extracted it. So on extracting, we get these two separate folders, and inside this, let's see what all we have. Org HSQL database, and we have these numerous packages and class files. So HSQL database is basically implemented in Java, and this is the structure of how the files are arranged. So after we have extracted the HSQL database, now the next step, let's see, we can start the server. So we go to the command prompt. Okay, before that we have to set up certain server.properties. So we create a file named server.properties into the folder where we have placed the jar and extracted it. So in this server.properties, we are going to name the database and we are going to name the file corresponding to the database. Here I have used mydb as a name for my database. Now the next step is to launch the server. So to launch the server, now for the version 2.5.0, the package structure is org hsqldb.server.server. So the package structure we have already seen over here, org hsqldb database server.server. So this is where the server gets launched from within this class. So let's go to the, here I have already launched the server and it gets launched by this. It loads the properties from our server.properties that we have specified. Here are the database details. These are the details that are picked up from these server.properties, and then the server gets booted. Is online on port 9001. Now proceeding to the next step, now the server is up and running. Now what we have to do is we have to specify these connection details in our regular Hibernate configuration file. So when we are connecting Hibernate configuration to any Oracle or SQL Server database, this is a typical Hibernate configuration that we use. In the same configuration file is to be used for the HSQL connection details. So here we have the dialect to be specified as HSQL dialect, the driver to be specified as HSQLDB dialect, and this is the format of our HSQL connection string. Now this is this server I am launching independently, not from within the JVM of our clan program. So that's why the SQL string becomes as JDBC HSQLDB HSQL followed by the host, port, and the database name. That's how this connection string came to be. SA is the default username that gets created. When we go into the source and there is this source folder, that comes source a jar that gets downloaded as a Maven along with the Maven dependency. So once we open this database manager.java, here we see quite a lot of details in this file. Of course, database manager is a file used for a different purpose, but this is one of the file where you can see the default username and password. So even I think so in the server.java we might be able to see if we were to open it. So see org HSQL database server.java. Yes, there are a lot of details in this file. So you can also have a look at this file. Let us search username, password. I think so it must be mentioned in some of the files basically because this is the default username password that the HSQL database is using. So let's move ahead. And this is the entity that I'm going to use for this example. So let's see this entity later. Now this is the another configuration file. Similarly, it has been made. Only difference is that the connection string is JDBC, HSQLDB, mem, and here this is the database name that I wish to use. Now this configuration file is used when we want to connect to HSQL, which is going to be launched within our JRE container. So this we will see in the later part. So now next we will have to create one dbutil file. This dbutil file is a utility file which returns a session factory object for us to work upon, and it takes the responsibility of closing the session factory. So this is how we typically proceed with our uh, session factory in the case of other databases. The only difference will be over here. Our configuration file will be the configuration file that we just now saw. So that string we will be passing to the configure method. So here this is our dbutil file. Now next we proceed to make our client program. So this is our entity student. This is annotated as an entity as usual. Here we have an ID name where we have written at ID sequence generator value. This is to auto-generate values for the ID. These are the getter setters and the toString method, and these are two constructors provided. So this is our student entity. This is the client program. In the client program, we are doing the very basic stuff like obtaining a session and creating a student, saving it into the session, and ultimately committing the session. So this is the only activity that we are doing. Remaining methods are delete all student, get all students. Let's see them one by one. So this is about the client program, this is the utility program and the configuration file. Now in the configuration file, we have also mentioned one thing, that is the Hibernate HBM to DDL auto, and we have specified the value as update. So now HBM to DDL, what this property is basically used for is to create the database if the database is not present already. So if the ultimately when we are using any DDL queries, if the entities are not present in the database, those entities get created as per our flags that we set against these properties. So right now we have set it as update. So if the entity is not present, if the table is not present, then it gets created. If it is already created and we have some modifications on the table, then it gets updated. Basically, that's how it is. And the insert queries and all, they get fired. And as with our other databases, we can set this show SQL property to true, so that on the console we see what all queries are getting ultimately fired on our database. So this is about all the configuration and setup and the jars and all, and we have already started our server on port 9001. So now we are good to start our client program. It is written inside the main method. So what we will do is we will launch our client program by saying run, and we will see what is the output on the console. So now I have already executed this once or twice. So I have a certain student entities already present in the database. So in my client program, I am executing two things. First is create student and then get all student. In get all student, I am using the create criteria passing student.class and .list. So what this particular command statement it does is that it fires a select all select star query on the student entity on the table mapped against the student class. So that ultimately what gets fired is a select star on the database. So this is the query that gets fired, and this is the outcome of the query. So we have inserted a one value and we have selected all the values and displayed on the console. So if we run it one more time, this time we have id is equal to 3, id is equal to 4. We are running it again, and what we see is id number 5, because we are doing a create student and after that we are firing the get all students. So this is our basic program for connecting to the HSQL server that we have launched independently. Now we can see how we can launch it in memory. So for that we are using this Hibernate configuration file as we have discussed, and this is the connection URL that we are using. The value of this connection URL is JDBC HSQLDB mem in memory SQL. So this is a static part of the string, and this is something that you can specify. This is a custom defined name of the database. So this is something JDBC HSQLDB mem is something that you cannot modify. After that you can specify the database name. So this is the only variable part in the connection URL for using HSQL database as an in-memory database. So now proceeding further, we have to change the configuration file which is input to our session factory creation code. So instead of the HSQL external config, now I'm going to use the HSQL in-memory config because its value is hibernate.hsql in-memory CFG XML, which is this particular thing. In-memory HSQL. So this is the file that we are going to refer to. So let's change the variable. I have replaced it over here. Save, build. Now we again launch our client program. Run as Java application, and let's see the console this time. This time what happens is that a student gets created, one insert query is fired, the select all is fired, and what gets displayed is our student that gets created. If we run the program one more time, again, we see that only one student is created and it gets displayed, as opposed to our previous output. In the previous run, we were using the externally launched HSQLDB and not the in-memory database that we are presently using. So in case of in-memory database, the database gets created and deleted as the JVM gets launched and shut down. So during each launch, the database gets freshly created. So that is not the case with our external database. So this is about the coding part of HSQL database when used as an external database and an internal database. So let's look at a few other things to be noted about. So one point is that HSQL provides a GUI along with it. So to launch the GUI, we can go to the command prompt. We can go to the command prompt. This is a folder, and this we are ultimately what we are firing is Java, and we are launching database manager swing. So database manager swing, if we go to the source code of that, we see that there is one main method in that. So this is where it gets launched, and this is all using a swing API, and it gets launched as an applet. So after running the code, running the command, this command java space org hsqldb.util.database manager swing, enter. When we do, this is something that gets launched, and here we see that this is our local host. Presently I'm connecting to file connect. This is how we can connect to in memory or our server database. So presently I am connected to the server. Over here we see the connection URL. Connection string specifies localhost 9001 MyDB. MyDB is the external DB that we have created. So we can fire the select star query and click on the execute button, and this is the data that we have stored in the database. We also get numerous other options. Let's relaunch the database. Here we have the server localhost 9001 MyDB. Okay. And over here student, right click, delete from student. So if we execute this, we are going to delete all the student update count 3. So 3 records have got deleted. Now from our client program, we can go back again and create those records. First we are going to change the configuration file so that it connects to the database that we want to connect to. This is the client program, and we are going to run it one more time. Run as Java application. Let's see the output. Here the student gets created, a single student, and this time no student from student ID 3 or 4 or 5 gets uh, displayed because it has got deleted, because we have deleted it from here. So this is how we have this GUI. We can shut this down, and let's proceed further on what we have to, what we can first, what we can see. These are some URLs that while doing a Google search you can hit upon. So these are the Java files that we can go through. There are a lot of details in these files. Server dot properties. Okay, now when we are launching the server, there are certain files that get created. Let's have a look at those. Yeah, this is where we have the jar, and this is where we have unzipped the jar. So now these are the files that get created for MyDB database. Let's open them in Notepad, except for this log file. These files we can open over here. First is mydb.properties. These are certain HSQL database properties. This is mydb log, where each execution of the my database gets logged over here. This is where we have right now created a student object, and we have issued the 3 delete commands. These have got logged in the mydb log. And mydb script, these are all the scripts that are executed for creation of the database. Such kind of things, they get logged over here. So let us go ahead and now take a look at certain important HTML pages that we can go through. So this is a HSQLDB.org doc guide.html. So this is HyperSQL user guide for the version 251. We are using 250. This is a table of contents. Here all the details are mentioned of how to connect to it. So these are the connection strings that are specified. The username, password is specified. So here we get a lot of details. It is well documented. When we search for uses of HSQL database, we get numerous pages out here. So we can open a couple of them and have a look at them if we were to look at the databases. So along with HSQL, there are numerous other databases like H2. Then we have Apache Derby, SQLite that runs only in embedded mode, either in memory or saved as a file. So these are certain other databases that you can give a try. You can use Spring Boot for in-memory databases. So we'll continue to the discussion of in-memory databases with other databases as well as with Spring Boot, and we'll connect the database to basically we will connect to numerous of these databases going further. So this was all about the HSQL database, and you can map the external server within the Eclipse only. If you were to see the log file inside your Eclipse only over here, and yes, that's about it for today. Thank you.